from epic fortress cities that once stood shoulder to shoulder with Rome and Constantinople, to spectacular caves and breathtaking mountain scenery. Bulgaria just slapped me in the face with how truly epic it is. Let me share with you the highlights from my train journey through Bulgaria, which includes ancient sites, incredible nature, and authentic towns. After spending a couple of days in the capital, which you can see in my other video, I was ready to jump on a train to head further into Bulgaria.
The typical travel route in Bulgaria is kind of a circle through the center of the country, which seems like a very sensible route. I'm gonna do something maybe less sensible, which is going all the way up to the north. Now the only way back from the north is to go the same way you came, so it might be a little bit of a detour, but I think it will be worth it.
Off we go, through the suburbs and farmlands around the capital, Sofia. And then through the Iskar Gorge, running through the Balkan mountains that gave the wider region its name. It's an incredibly scenic journey via tunnels and bridges and passing by mountain villages. Trains are the one transportation method I almost never tire of. The fantastic views of rugged crags and limestone towers made me hardly notice the time, despite the trip taking about 6 hours. And yes, the trains in Bulgaria aren't the most modern and maybe a little slow, but that's just part of the charm.
Alright, this lady in my carriage informed me that there's a 15-minute break here. So everyone's just kind of chilling by the train, having a cigarette. Might quickly go to the toilet and get back on board because my bag is still in there.
By the way, if you want to use the toilets, do it at the stations because the onboard ones can be a little wild. But other than that, the trains are comfortable enough. After the locomotive switched sides, we continued for the final stretch. I was picked up at the station by the owner of my guest house, who's also the owner of a Soviet-made Lada that's still running just fine. I quickly dropped my luggage and headed up the mountain for a better view of the town.
So that was an amazing train ride, actually. I really enjoyed that. At first I was a bit worried because the train went in the opposite direction of where I thought it would be going. But it turns out it makes like a 90-minute detour like all around east and north of Sofia. And only then does it go through the mountains, but the landscapes are beautiful. And once you pass that mountain range, you get to the plains where there's these huge fields of like sunflowers. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, now I'm in Belogradchik, which is famous for its really epic fortress. So this might just be the most unusual fortress that I've ever visited. This is really remarkable because what you have here are these giant stone pillars pushed up in millions of years by tectonic activity, and then erosion takes care of the rest. So you have this circle of stone pillars here on top of a hill. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is a really strategic location, and they didn't even have to do very much to turn it into a fortress because all they had to do was make one wall in the front here and another wall at the back, and that closed the circle, and then you have yourself a fortress.
This fortress was used by many different powers through the ages, from the Romans to the Byzantine Empire to the Bulgarian Empire and Ottoman Empire. They all ruled over this region from this natural bastion. And the views from the top are simply spectacular.
It's so quiet. It really feels like a fantasy location here. Something that might have been in Game of Thrones, or Lord of the Rings, or take your pick. Actually, if it was winter now, it would be 100% Skyrim.
Belogradchik is also just a nice town to spend some time. I should mention I loved my stay in large part because of the warm hospitality at my guest house. If you need a place to stay in Belogradchik, go to Elena Guest House. The owners only speak Bulgarian, but with gestures and Google Translate, that's not a problem at all. And they know just how to make travelers feel right at home.
Since it's so beautiful around here, I decided to go on a morning hike. There's this wonderful trail that goes through the valley behind the big rocks that you saw yesterday. It's a wonderful bit of forest, and then sometimes you see those rocky spires pop out through the trees, and it's absolutely lovely here.
Other rocks have different names like Goddess Mother or the Gorilla Rock, and you can make a walking route between them if you're using a hiking app or Maps.me. After spending some time in this stunning location, I was definitely hyped for Bulgaria and eager to see more. Little did I know that some of the best was still to come. First, I had to backtrack to Sofia, from where I went to the city of Plovdiv, and I cover both of these cities in their own videos. From Plovdiv, I took a train to Veliko Tarnovo, which was once the heart of the Bulgarian Empire. Along the way, a Bulgarian passenger in my cabin asked if I wanted to see the locomotive. Then I realized he's a train freak who just really wanted to show me his model of the actual train that we were in.
Veliko Tarnovo, I think, is a great example of kind of the contrast that you can find in Bulgaria. Over there, you see loads of kind of socialist style buildings, apartment blocks, big hotels. And when I arrived here yesterday, it was raining, there were dark clouds in the sky, so I gave this very stark impression to the city, which isn't so much the case today because the weather has improved. But you know, that was kind of the aesthetic that I was confronted with upon arrival. But then this other side of the town is absolutely cute. It has all these little houses and this insanely huge fortress that is beautifully situated on top of a hill. And actually this whole town is amazingly well sited. It's kind of nestled around this big canyon. You can see the river down there, and yeah, everything is kind of packed together around this kind of valley.
Veliko Tarnovo has a rich history, once being the capital of the Second Bulgarian Empire during the Middle Ages. Some people just call it Tarnovo. Veliko means great, and this was added to the name in 1965. Today it has a population of around 90,000 people. It is a very pleasant tourist town with beautiful valley views pretty much everywhere. While the old town is really nice, the star attraction in Tarnovo is the epic fortress, which is on quite another scale from the one I saw in Belogradchik. Something I love about traveling is learning about history that isn't part of the standard curriculum, at least not in any of my history classes that I had in the Netherlands.
And we're
the Bulgarian Empire was in fact a major power in the Middle Ages, stretching into what is today Greece, Romania, Albania, and Serbia.
Some bits and pieces have been reconstructed, like the main gate, but a lot of it was burned down when the Ottomans invaded. So we only have the outer walls here a little bit. Across the river, there's another walled area, and on the other side was a third fortress area. So this must have been a huge complex. Consider how big this area is, and that there were not one but three fortified cities basically next to each other. You can imagine that this was a really big deal at the time. And I was reading that actually in the Middle Ages people would compare this site in terms of its magnificence with places like Rome and Constantinople.
Tarnovo was conquered by the Ottoman Turks in 1393. And the city was destroyed after a siege that lasted 3 months. One of the fortress's most impressive features is its huge bridge to the main gate. And I don't know if this is how things happen, but my mind can't help but imagine Ottoman troops fighting along this entire length to finally breach the main gate.
Okay, that was not what I expected. I exited the castle and this man comes up to me. He was saying, yeah, I work around here, I work in a village. I wasn't really sure what he was saying. And he says, I have something I want to show you. And he gets his little Ziploc bag out. I'm thinking like, wait, what, is he trying to sell drugs here? This is stupid. And then he says, I'm an archaeologist. And I have these little original coins that I dug up from the ground. Look, it's Emperor whatever. So look at these coins. I don't know if they're real or anything, but he definitely tried to show me his credentials somehow. He knew a guy who worked at Harvard University, and he says I'm the Bulgarian Indiana Jones. I don't know, but that was an interesting interaction that went a little bit differently from how I thought it was gonna go.
Having had my dose of epic fortresses at this point, I was trying to take it easy for the rest of my stay in Tarnovo. Mostly, I enjoyed some very reasonably priced V60s at this lovely cafe. Later I went back to my hostel where I tried to have a nap, which almost succeeded until I heard this absolutely massive bang.
Oh shit. Now water streaming everywhere.
The janitor rushed in and stopped the flood, but with my napping attempt thoroughly failed, I headed out in search for tranquility. Luckily, I found it at the nearby river.
I'm just kind of looking around the area around my hostel, and there's this wonderful little river here. And the cool thing is, whenever I step somewhere, frogs jump out into the water. It's like Frog City here. Must mean that the water quality is really good, because amphibians are the first to suffer from pollution and things like that. Really nice spot. Lots of dragonflies as well, loads of them. Okay, I think I've now seen 30 or 40 different frogs. That's crazy. Maybe I'm super basic for finding that impressive, but I am actually impressed by it. I've never seen that many frogs. And what do we have here? An abandoned dam. Alright, let's go check out some abandoned stuff. Oh. This is so cool. This feels very The Last of Us or something. That bench has seen better days.
Okay, that was just a bit of urban exploring, but the main part of Tarnovo is a really nice tourist town with a lot of charm. I should mention though that it's somewhat surrounded by two highways and the main road can be very busy with cars, so it was a bit less tranquil than I expected. However, the views are really amazing, especially when enjoyed over a great Bulgarian meal. And I definitely recommend adding Tarnovo to your itinerary. After 3 nights in Tarnovo, I took a minibus to my next stop, which is one of the oldest towns in Bulgaria and home to what was perhaps the most spectacular place I visited on this trip.
I have arrived in Lovech, and what a wonderful little place this is. It's kind of just a small village. I believe the current number of residents is around 20,000. Actually, that would make it a small town. And I'm already loving it. There are so many wonderful old houses here. The guest house I'm staying in is so cute. The common area there feels almost like a tavern or something. And the owner is fantastic as well. In fact, one of the great things there is they give you a photocopied map with the local sites. I love when it happens. It's one of my my little things that I just really enjoy whenever I've been to a hostel or a guest house or some kind of local accommodation and they give you a hand-drawn map of the area, I'm just sold. I love that shit. Oof. It's very sunny right now, as you can see. Behind me is the one thing that this town is famous for, the covered bridge of Lovech. So this was built in the 19th century. The idea being that the merchants and whatever could have little shops on the bridge. And apparently this is the only example in the Balkans of like an old covered bridge. There have been some new ones. In fact, in Plovdiv I saw one, but this is the only one that is original. Let's see what is inside here. Some souvenir shops, I would imagine.
Lovech seems to be usually visited by day trippers, but I really enjoyed staying overnight. You can enjoy some traditional meals at tavern-style restaurants, and it's in such a peaceful location by the river. I also really enjoyed chatting a lot with the owner of my guest house, who was once a sailor who traveled all over the world, and he knew a lot of interesting facts about Lovech and Bulgaria. I don't usually show these kind of encounters in my videos, but they are a huge part of why I enjoyed this trip.
So this morning I woke up with a slight hangover because last night after dinner I decided to order a rakia, which is a plum wine, or can be made from many different things, but in this case it was made of plums and it's a local thing. So I thought, you know what, when in Rome, let's try this out. And they served me a double, which I hadn't asked for, and man, that hit me hard. I only had one beer and one rakia, but it was enough to kind of give me a cranky mood this morning. But it's all okay, it's a beautiful day.
Lovech is lovely, but my real reason for coming here was to visit one of the biggest caves in the Balkans. You can't reach it by public transport, but my guest house arranged for a friendly driver to get me there and back.
Some kids are throwing rocks into the creek. Makes a really good echoing sound. Wow, what a stunning cave. This is one of the largest caves in Bulgaria. It's not even the largest, which is surprising. I mean, look at the height of this ceiling. And actually it is 2.5 kilometers deep. So it just continues for a very long distance there. And you can't continue over there because bats are resting. They say that over 35,000 bats are known to be living in there. And a dozen species.
What you're hearing though are not the bats, but the large numbers of birds that also make this cavern their home.
So this cave has been used by humans for millennia. There's evidence that people were here in like the Neolithic times. It makes sense because you're completely sheltered here, but there's also the light coming in. And as someone was explaining, like this area would have been really great for hunting, and there's water nearby. So this would have been a perfect hideout.
The earliest traces of human presence here date back 70,000 years, which is kinda crazy to think about. What's remarkable about this cave is the openings in the 30-meter high ceiling, which create several natural light shafts, through which the birds come and go.
Very impressive. Imagine if you were like a member of a tribe and you went to meet a tribal leader here or something like that. You would immediately just express fealty to this lord of the cave. I don't know. I just imagine a throne being there or something like that. Yeah, if I was a tribal leader, that's where I would set up to intimidate my enemies. And I would have archers up there in the holes in the ceiling, so that anyone who comes in, I would just shoot them from above if I didn't like them. That's my plan. When the apocalypse comes, I'm gonna go here and set up my camp. I fell for it again. I was in a taxi and I asked the taxi driver to drop me off a little bit earlier at the bridge. So I said most, which is bridge. And it seemed like he was just refusing. It seemed like he was just saying, no, I'm not doing that. No. I was like, most, bridge. It's like, and then I remembered that in Bulgaria, the nodding works a little bit differently. So this actually means yes. And I knew that before this trip, but it's something so deep, so internalized that 3 times now I've already forgotten that this is the case. And I thought people were being super rude to me, but actually they were just being nice and saying, yep, I'll do that for you. All right, well.
On that note, I should mention that the Bulgarians I met on this trip were all super friendly. Despite my trip being in August, which is normally a terrible time to travel in Europe, I could enjoy a relaxed vibe and almost no tourist crowds. If there's something I want to come back to Bulgaria for, it's definitely to see more of the mountains. And it's really because I got such a great taste of the stunning mountain scenery on a final day trip from Sofia.
I guess it's kind of the most famous hike in Bulgaria. And I'm loving the cool air up here. It's been very sweaty and hot on this trip, so this is a nice change. Alright, I'm gonna go up to the bridge. I'm gonna do a full circle all around that mountain over there and come back to this hut in maybe 4 hours or 5, I'm not sure.
The ski lift takes you to around 2,200 meters or 7,200 feet, so you're treated to great views right away. You can adapt your route to anywhere from 2 to 6 or more hours. And yes, as you'd expect, there are in fact 7 beautiful lakes here. For the best views of them, you will have to take the longer route.
Wow, look at that crystal clear ice water. Gorgeous. I wonder how cold it is. I'm gonna try it out. Not that cold actually. I expected it to be frickin' freezing, but it's just a nice mild temperature. Alright. Could have taken a swim here.
Here in the Rila Mountains, but also in Piridi National Park and elsewhere, there are many huts that let you do multi-day treks. After hearing the experiences of other travelers doing some of these treks, I'm definitely adding this to my travel to-do list for a future trip.
How are you guys doing? Okay.
There are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 legs on this side, and one just over the hill here.
My time in Bulgaria has been wonderful, and I hope you enjoyed this video. In which case, consider a like or subscribe. And if you'd like more practical tips for Bulgaria, I'll be sharing some posts on my blog linked in the description below.